Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today's October. What the heck? I didn't write the date down. Is it 7?
7.
Oh my God. 10/7/2025. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank one of my best friends, Jay Paulson, for introducing me to his dad, Tim Paulson. Thanks so much, Tim. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Los Angeles.
First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being, I've been thinking a lot lately about the word connection. And I think of like E.M. Forster's, the last line of his book, A Passage to India, where he says, only connect. And right now I've got a 4-year-old grandson living with us temporarily until his house is ready. And the thing that just charms me about him is he just wants to be connected. If I'm taking the garbage out, he wants to help. If I'm walking the dog, he wants to carry the poop bag. He just wants to be connected.
It's a great word, and it's great you put in that source from the literature. That's beautiful. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Well, information, if we're talking about, and we can, I'll cover different, for news about the world, I do listen to that on the radio. I prefer to hear it in an audio version, usually or typically NPR, than I don't spend a lot of time watching it on television. I have nothing against news that comes from television. And you can look at my face and you can see that I'm of a generation that grew up reading newspapers, and I still do. I love getting a daily newspaper, and I read 2 of those. So, but my big source of information is other people, the people.
Yeah, other people too. But you said you read 2 newspapers. What 2 newspapers you read?
I read the LA Times. I've been living in Los Angeles now for 41 years. And I have always thought it was a really good paper. And then I read the New York Times. I do like the New York Times. My wife, Jane, and I lived in New York for 10 years. And all 3 of our boys were born in New York. So we love keeping that connection to New York.
No, I like them both. I love the LA Times, New York Times, really good. But did you become a reader, 1, because your parents told you to, 2, they did as an example, or 3 on your own?
My mother was a voracious reader, and she did something that I can't do. She loved to read in bed. I love to sleep in bed, but I don't like to read in bed. My back is too finicky to sit in bed for any prolonged length of time and read. But I'd come home from school, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom till I was about 14, and then she went back to work. And I'd find her in the bedroom reading, and she liked popular fiction. And my dad never read a book. I remember when I published my first novel, I just was going through a period where I really wanted a connection with my dad. And I tried so hard to get him to read that novel. I finally got him to read about 1 chapter, the first chapter. But he was a magazine reader and educated. So, and very, very political. So he was very engaged with the world, but he had absolutely no room for fiction.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tim, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for the whole human race, but I just think I think for one thing, we're just built that way. I think we evolved that way. I just think most of us have a hunger for information. We've got these eyes and ears that are just, pulling in information constantly, and we're trying to take that information and analyze it. So I think almost instinctual. So,
Do thoughts create emotions?
yeah, absolutely. But it's really interesting because um, I'm in a program called Al-Anon, which is an 12-step organization for families and friends of alcoholics. And we really make a point of telling newcomers when they come in that, thoughts are not feelings. I've learned in that program that a lot of the thoughts that come into my mind that are kind of unpleasant or that inspire me to want to, be angry or, too emotional or whatever, I can just put them on a shelf and leave them there. I don't have to have every thought manifest itself to the people that I'm around.
Really good, Tim. Thank you. You're concise and articulate. I appreciate this. Now, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
think it.
Yeah.
I mean, that used to bother me if I didn't know what I thought. And there was a period when I was younger that I thought it was really important to have opinions about everything. As I got older, and especially in Al-Anon 12-step program, I learned that opinions are not facts, and they're not even thoughts. They're just that, they're opinions.
Yeah. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. But can humans think without language?
I think a lot of my thoughts, I see an advertisement for a milkshake and I'm hungry and I can start craving that without thinking, I want a milkshake right now.
Right. I know that. You just described something I go through all the time.
Yeah. You can, in fact, I think maybe it could even be a skill. I like your suggestion that maybe, maybe we should learn to cultivate, having thoughts that we don't verbalize or think, in other words, just feel, rather than be thinking all the time,
Well, that's interesting. Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Tim, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
What do I do when language breaks down? When I'm not, working, a program of, acceptance, I can become frustrated, and I do sometimes. I grew up in a household where we did raise our voices, and it was a noisy household. We did fight sometimes. So some of my work, on myself as I've gotten older, is to try not to let any frustration about not being able to express myself well or having other people understand what I'm saying, accepting that and not automatically getting triggered into anger or something because of that.
Tim, do you think your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I'm going to go with Descartes, say, I think, therefore I am, because I think it is, I've got a dog and two amazing cats. So I love animals, but I do really think that ability to think, I didn't even intend to say, I think, does put us in a special class. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the fact that we've evolved into beings that not only are, but can become aware of the fact that we are, and enjoy that. Really enjoy
Really
that.
good. Really good. Enjoy it is a great term. Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? Or people meditate, go, now think about not thinking. And there's a bumper sticker on a car in my street and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in Al-Anon, we say it's a paraphrase of AA where they say, don't take the first drink. We say, don't take the first think.
Oh, don't take the first. I like that. Don't take
Yeah. Don't take that first think,
the first think. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of great quotes in that with that word. My favorite is the Marx Brothers are in a jam and one of them goes, we got to think. And the other one goes, we already tried that.
Yeah. There you're getting into the insanity principle too, where you think of a certain way to do something and it doesn't work, but you keep trying it. But if it didn't work the first time, they're onto something. I think maybe they coined the insanity principle. Because
well, there's several there. The Marx Brothers say insanity clause when they're talking about Santa Claus. The insanity clause. And McLuhan really nails it. He said you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital.
Yeah, that's really funny. By the way, I have to brag a little bit. I did my master's in English at the college where he taught, University of Toronto. And
you did your master's at U of T?
I did, and I don't know why I didn't try harder to audit one of his classes. Maybe he wasn't teaching at that time or something. But
wow.
But anyway, he did teach at the University.
There's a lot of great things that happen at U of T, and they're still happening there. There's one more think quote I love is Captain Beefheart. He said, I had too much to think.
Oh, I had too much to think?
Yeah.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. That's
because I sometimes think that when I think about the program I mentioned before in Al-Anon, one of the things that many of us, having grown up around all the chaos around alcohol and addiction, is overthinking.
Oh, yeah.
I almost think like you could call it Overthinkers Anonymous because
exactly. These are two from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah.
You'll know this from the biography I sent you. I was in a real hurry when I sent that this morning, and so when I sent you, I was applying for a job with the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. So I have my whole formation in Catholic schools, but the two great commandments, say that you love God with not only your whole heart, but also with your whole mind. And whatever God is to someone, it could be a higher power, could be the universe, however each of us, whatever higher power we find, it's just as important to approach that being with our mind as with our heart. I find it really interesting that those are the two great commandments when they as thyself. So I really love that. And no one pointed it out to me as a child. That you have to love yourself as.
Yeah, you broke up a little there, Tim. You broke up there a little, but I think it ended with it's important to know yourself. Is that what you were saying?
No, what I said is the second of the two commandments.
As yourselves. Thank you.
So you really are supposed to love your, yourself as much as you love your neighbor.
Really good.
Yeah.
The second Turing question is, can machines think?
I'm like I'm not like everybody else because I don't know what everybody else is thinking. As a younger man, I used to think I was a pretty good mind reader, but I wasn't at all. I had a very active imagination, but so I'm trying to stay open-minded about AI. And that question seems to, I've already forgotten exactly what the quote is, but it has to do with machines thinking. Is
Yeah.
that it? Machines?
Can machines think is the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I'm trying to stay open-minded about AI. I have a friend who recently published a book with a small press, and it's a novel. And she told me that the copy editing was done with AI, which so initially I was kind of horrified. She did tell me that the publisher did allow her to go back through it, and change anything back that she thought AI had gotten wrong. And, recently I was on a Zoom call with a friend, it wasn't a business call. And one of us, either they just changed their functionality on Zoom again, or I didn't turn something off. But I got a transcript, not a transcript, because I've always known that Zoom can transcribe, but I got a summary of our conversation, and it was a little bit disorienting, and it was also not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So I think machines maybe, and this is not super original because I've been reading articles about people that have found AI really useful. Um, maybe a better way of thinking would be not that machines can think, but that they can maybe help us think more efficiently.
Well,
'Cause-
that's good, Tim, because that's what I heard is um, AI's in its early stage and it's our job to raise it well. So we want to do the best. But it's definitely going to have disservices and services, and it's how we're going to deal with it. But I think that was good. I mean, you've had some, direct experience with it, and it varies. Okay, so do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Oh, um, I'll tell you something, and this is something my wife Jane read a while back. When we raised our three sons, it was back in the 80s and 90s, and it was really important to parents. Like, I think if you had interviewed most parents, they would have said that the most important thing they wanted for their children was to be happy. And, I was probably, I don't want to say, if I say guilty of that, then I'm putting a pretty big value judgment on happiness. But, I probably was part of that zeitgeist. But what she read recently that I thought was really interesting was that what's really the most important for children is not to be happy, but it's to be good.
Wow.
And that just blew me away because, I'm like everybody else. Of course, I want to be happy, but there's a lot of stuff I don't have any control over that may make me more happy or less happy. But I just love that, and so where you said, I think meaningful, would you rather happy?
Yeah, you more pursue happiness or meaning, because it's interesting, Tim. I got the question from Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning, and he says happiness doesn't tend to last and meaning tends to last.
Okay, I'm surprised I didn't recognize that from him because I do love that book.
Yeah,
and I reread it about a decade ago. And the thing that has stuck with me from that most recent reading was, and this I'm talking about having just maybe a couple of months ago coming back from Amsterdam. Jane and I went to Amsterdam, and for the first time, I got to tour Anne Frank's house, and I got to reread her autobiography, and realize, what an extraordinary book that is. But the thing that he wrote about that stuck with me this time around was I don't think he used the term tempted fate, but he never did anything. He was not fatalistic, but he didn't spend his time trying to figure out and second guess whether he should do what was right in front of him, or maybe avoid it and try to do something different. And he used an example where a bunch of his friends had heard they could get out of a camp and escape on a truck, and he didn't go because there was something else he'd committed to. And of course, you can guess how that story ended. The truck got stopped and they all got arrested. But I just was so intrigued by that.
Yeah.
That idea that I love that book. Thank you for mentioning that book.
Really good. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I was required, I went to Georgetown for undergrad, and we were required to take a philosophy course and a theology course every year. But I did not major in philosophy. I always found philosophy, that's to me such a philosophical question. Those questions are kind of like math to me. They're really hard for me to grasp always. But your question, for whatever reason, made me think of a guy that I read, a philosopher theologian back in college, Teilhard de Chardin. And I don't know if you have come across him or read.
Oh yeah, he's a big influence on McLuhan. Yeah.
Was he? Oh no, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that. Yeah, and so my thing is like, maybe consciousness is like Alexa. It can be activated if
Yeah.
something puzzling comes in or a question comes in, or but I do think my experience of thinking and overthinking is that, and I've done different self-help programs where they talk about the drunk monkey, and that's your mind that's constantly talking to you and chattering at you. I think the human mind is built, I won't say programmed, but probably built or ended up being something that likes to be active.
Love it. Yeah, that's good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I don't know. I've never, the whole idea of the speed of light just boggles my mind. We look up at stars and they might have burned out like hundreds or thousands of years ago, and we don't know because the light hasn't gotten here yet. But I would think they'd be kind of similar speeds, but possibly thinking maybe even faster because the distances aren't very great.
I like that. Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Her colleague said, "Oh, you can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest? And it doesn't have to be tangible.
Well, now, okay, I was following you along until I realized I was going to have to say something at the end of it.
No, that's all right. It's more or less, what's the tool you most gravitate towards?
Well, when I'm doing my life the way I'd like to do it, it's absolutely listening. And
Wow.
It's so corny to say, we got one mouth and two ears, but I just, every time I start to say something and I realize I'm just waiting my turn to give my opinion, and instead I stop myself and I actually listen to what someone else is saying. I learn something, so
I respect you highly there, Tim. Listening is one of the most important tools ever. And I agree with you. Really cool. Now, the follow-up is, what toy do you gravitate towards? I kept asking this tool question, and then someone said, "Hey, what about a toy?" So is there any toy you gravitate towards?
You've probably gathered by now, I have always kind of taken myself pretty seriously. We have these do's and don'ts in Al-Anon, and one of them is do find hobbies and recreation. And so, I mean, there's currently there's no toy that, like, if I look around my office right now, there might be from my grandkids or something around. So it almost makes me want to go back to earlier in my life, maybe my own childhood, what was a toy that I enjoyed. But you know what? I'm going to leave the question unanswered because nothing popped into my head.
That is all right. I want people to know you don't have to answer the question. You
Yeah.
can say, I can't answer that question. I'm really for tangents, stories, anecdotes. And, Rebecca Solnit said it well. Just because you ask me a question doesn't mean I have to answer it. So that's totally okay. So, Tim, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, I'm from a family, well, I've already mentioned there, where there's a lot of anxiety floating around in my gene pool, a lot. And some of it landed in my body. And so a lot of my family members have sleep issues. And and I think we were talking earlier about overthinking and about the mind, constantly being churning. And I think that's actually the curse of insomnia, is really that you can't turn your mind off, that you just keep thinking when we all know it's really important to have a break, and get rested and be able to fall asleep and process what you've experienced. So I know I've done a lot of sales training and different things like that. And that question of what keeps you up at night is a very common, kind of question. But I have worked very, very hard to be able to turn my mind off when I go to bed. And generally, I'm pretty successful at it.
That is really highly that's cool. I aspire to that, but I don't attain it that often.
Uh-huh.
So a poet said that artists are the antenna of the race. The artists, the writers, filmmakers, painters, they're broadcasting and detecting
Yeah.
the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. And so I ask you the question, why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, I mean, are we ignoring them? I mean, I think it's so funny because, you get this thing about wanting to, show off or whatever. When you started off with your thing about poets, I thought you were going to do that Shelley line about legislators of the world or whatever, and I'm not sure I agree with you that I don't remember your exact question. If you'd repeat it, that'd be great.
But no, it's not that I'm making it a complete. It's sometimes people don't get the hidden message in art. So you wrote two novels. I mean, that got published. You've had these two books. Maybe some people read them and don't get what they're really deeper about.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes, and it's not to be elitist, but sometimes, or you go to a movie, and just like your friend Patrick McGee, who's taught movies and literature for so many years, he knows that, you go to a John Ford movie, he loves Scorsese and Ford, and there's a little deeper meaning, but the people might just, engage them in the surface level. That's okay. But sometimes humans kind of ignore these hidden or deeper meaning. Why do some humans ignore deeper meaning in art sometimes?
I think like humans come in a spectrum of basically how much they enjoy thinking, and some people, I think, just enjoy the activity of using their mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are differences in intelligence too, and there are differences in emotional intelligence. But for example, my son Jay was in a group where they were reading Finnegan's Wake. Now, and whereas I've read Ulysses 3 times and I love Joyce, but I'm not going to read Finnegan's Wake. I'm just not going to, because you could it could be as basic as laziness. I don't want to work that hard. Like I have my own threshold. Like I'll read Midnight's Children. That's about right at the brink. Like that's kind of as hard as I want to work, you know.
Yeah.
And some people, and Pat, my friend Pat's a great example. He just goes deep, 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 much deeper than I do.
Yeah.
And in our friendship, it has created conflict at times, you know, where I
Yeah.
can come across as more superficial, but it's probably just lazier, you know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Tim, do artists have moral obligation?
Um, well, I think a more interesting question would be, do they have moral obligations that are any larger or more important than all of us?
Yeah.
You know, because all of us have moral obligations, and absolutely artists do. And
Yeah.
the artists that I really enjoy, they give me life lessons, you know, and maybe things not to do, you know, because you make these bad choices that people make in novels, or if you like to read biographies that they made in their real life, and you learn from it. So yeah, no, I think we all have that obligation, not just artists. But I agree with you that artists do, and good artists absolutely do.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I find that question really interesting, and I don't know. I'll go with old ideas because they're the
Yeah.
ones I know about. You know, the new
Yeah.
ones I don't know about yet. Some bad ones of those could come along, but there's plenty of ones that have already been tried and proved to be really, really bad.
That's right.
So I'm
Can you
afraid of those.
can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Oh yes, and I love that question, because the reason I like it is because when I describe it to people, they are very skeptical. But um, because I mean, memory is such a funny thing. And just the other day, when Jane Goodall died, um, my wife and I were talking, and she had been at the Writers Guild when a documentary was coming out, and Jane had taken our oldest grandson who was living with us, and we were raising him. And so I was talking to her. I said, I remember when we went to the Writers Guild and saw Jane Goodall, and she said, you weren't there. And I said, what do you mean I wasn't there? You know, I had such a vivid memory of it. She said, you weren't there. I went with Lion and you weren't there. And I was completely sure I was. But I've gotten, like, one of the things I do now is I don't always try to be right and look it up. But next thing I knew, she went to her phone and found a photograph with a date on it when our grandson was there. So I had my old calendar, and I opened it up, and actually back in 2017, and I went to that date, and apparently I did have some other engagement that evening. I'm still, when I see my friend, going to double check with him that he really actually did that, because to me it's so vivid.
Yeah.
So this is my caveat. My earliest memory is sitting on a stairways going into the kitchen at my great grandmother's house in Sedalia, Missouri, and somebody feeding me ice cream. And now, first of all, of course, as a 2-year-old, I didn't know it was my great grandmother. I didn't know I was in Sedalia, Missouri, but I probably knew I was eating this delicious dessert and really enjoying it. But it's because it's a place where I didn't live. I've always felt that it's a genuine memory. You know, it's a genuine memory.
Beautiful. Tim, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
An incredible blessing. I mean, my favorite novel is Proust,
Yeah.
Remembrance of Things Past.
Yeah.
And I've read it a couple of times, and I And I love that famous scene that everybody knows about where, he's eating a Madeleine, dipping it in tea or cocoa or something, and all of a sudden flooded with memories. But I love remembering. And I will say, especially earlier in my life, I could remember sometimes obsessively, maybe remember things that were painful that, isn't always productive to, dwell on or go back to frequently. But I love remembering. And I think being a writer, the novels I've written are generally have a lot of me in them. They're
Yeah.
stuff I remember, stuff that, that I've thought about. Maybe I change it somewhat, but based on my own life,
Beautiful. Tim, tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
Well, my mother. It would definitely be my mother.
What did you mainly get from your mom?
Well, my mother suffered deeply from depression, and she was also an alcoholic. But I didn't know that until I was a teenager. But I was the oldest of 5 children, so it was my job to kind of take care of her, and by taking care of the younger kids, by cheering her up, by my dad traveled a lot on business, so I've done psychoanalysis. It wasn't a completely healthy relationship. It was very enmeshed, but what I got in exchange for that, it was symbiotic. It was not abusive on my mother's part. What I got was just this devoted attention from my mother, who I knew listened to everything I said and found it interesting and discussed things with me. And so a lot of people that I meet have self-esteem issues. I mean, I have anxiety issues, but I don't know, that just I not self-esteem. The self-esteem was there. I was very important to my mother.
That listening word came up again now, so that's really good. You learned how to listen from your mother. Beautiful, articulate, really good, Tim. Now, the same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Oh, this is a fun one to talk about. And my friend Pat McGee and I both had this teacher. His name was Bill Schreck. And he taught us in high school at Catholic High School for Boys in Memphis in the mid to late 60s. And he just rocked our world. I mean, the South was a fairly conservative place, although Catholics, ironically, were more liberal than most of the other people there. So, and my own parents, my mother was very socially liberal. She was very pro civil rights, and so I was not. But Bill was a guy that he was only about 9 years older than us, so he was very young, and he was just in the heart of all the civil rights movement stuff that was going on. He was very involved in the anti-war movement. The last year we were in high school, he left to join the Peace Corps and went to Africa and taught. And he was another, like I was talking about my mom, he taught in a way that we had never experienced before. We were really listened to. He listened to us. He didn't immediately make fun of some of the really provincial ideas that we had. And the more he listened, and he talked too about his own point of view, but the more he listened, the more empowered we felt. And, before I knew it, that was my career goal. I wanted to be a teacher. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
So cool. So do you pray?
Yeah, I do actually. As you know from that bio I sent, I was raised in a faith, Catholic faith. As a kid, I wanted to be a priest until I was in 8th grade, and I met Linda Denman, who was a cheerleader on the football team, and I fell in love with her. So, and I have to say, my mom was a really good sport, because I thought she was going to really be upset when I told her I didn't want to be a priest anymore. But
Well,
yeah,
Tim,
yeah, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I did eventually, through high school, I was in high school during Vatican II. So that was very, very exciting. The winds of change. And then I did go through, starting in college until my early 30s, an agnostic period. I was never considered myself an atheist, but I left that position of praying. But it's been being in the 12-step program, which is a spiritual program and not a religious program, has really heightened my religious life again. So at this point in my life, I'm I practice a religion pretty regularly.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Hey, welcome home.
I like that. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I'm sorry, do evil people exist?
Yeah, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Well, are you personifying evil, like the devil?
Well, I know the question's not worded perfectly, but it's sort of like, it's more than just saying, do evil people exist, or is it something else? Like,
yeah. I was telling my wife, talk about an early memory. Somebody told me in grade school that your guardian angel always stood on your right side.
Yeah.
And the devil would be on your left side tempting you. So I organized a kind of a stoning of the devil one day, where everybody kind of threw shoes at him, But I really don't get into all the weeds about religion anymore, but I always thought the idea of original sin, I never saw why it bothered people. It seems to me that humans have an innate propensity or ability for evil to arise. We're very self-centered. We're very selfish. Yeah. We want what we want. We have these really strong emotions that cause us to do things that harm other people. So I never minded the idea that little baby in your arms, that's 6 weeks old, has got the seeds or the potential to be evil when he or she grows up.
Yeah, that's a lot of people say that, Tim. They go, everyone's capable of doing something evil, or acting bad, let's say. But how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Coppola stole from the Mob and the Samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. But what I was curious, first, before you answer, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? How would you respond to Alan Watts? He says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
God, you've got a plethora of fantastic quotes there. Nothing I'm going to say is going to come close. But what I will say, that recent assassination, where the wife got up at the ceremony and forgave the person who killed her husband, I was moved by that. I thought that's, and I recently heard somebody say the whole concept of turning the other cheek, which of course was Jesus who said this in the New Testament, that but somebody pointed out to me recently that in the act of turning the other cheek towards someone, you're watching somebody.
Yeah.
They're seeing your face, they're seeing your reaction, they're looking you in the eye. And I've never heard that before. I thought that was so incredible.
Eye contact. That's amazing to add that dimension to that quote. Yeah. But, Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the smell the foot gives off when the foot steps on the flower. No, I'm sorry. Forgiveness is the smell the flower gives off when the foot steps on the flower.
Is
So
that,
that,
could that be, that really does not sound like Mark Twain. I'm sure it
well,
is.
anyways, we can figure out, maybe he got it from someone else, but it's that idea of what is forgiveness. And, I like that sort of deep dive into it, but it's sort of like, what do we do when someone does us wrong? And, does punishment work? It's basically the next question. Like, how do we deal with this? Gregory Bateson said, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So, I mean, if you can identify an enemy, or there's someone doing something wrong to you, what can you do about it? Does punishment work? The big word now is accountability.
Yeah. I'm really guilty right now because I have two things I'm going to share, but
Yeah.
I've been holding them in my mind for like the last 45 seconds. So
Yeah.
I feel a little bad not being, I did hear everything you said. And, but I just want to confess that, because I'm trying not to do that. But there's something that I read recently. It's a reading that we have in Al-Anon, and it basically says, "Help me to pray for those whose behavior troubles me."
Yeah.
And what I like about that is it's not saying, "Please help me pray for the person who's doing something bad and who's a bad person." It's just that whatever they're doing is troubling me.
Yeah, trouble you. Yeah.
My reaction to them. So praying for them. And then I heard something else at a meeting not too long ago, and I love this. Pat McGee was the one who told me that he was always really troubled by the idea of forgiveness. He finds the idea, anytime I say, "I forgive you," I'm putting myself up on a pedestal and saying,
yeah,
"Be better than you are, but I'm going to, not break up with you because of what this terrible thing you've done." But I heard somebody suggest in a meeting recently, compared forgiveness to acceptance.
Yeah.
And it blew me away. I mean, the idea that, you do something that hurts me or harms me, I'm not going to say I forgive you, but I'm going to accept what you did. Because I can't change it. It's already happened.
Yeah, no, that's my sister taught me a great lesson in that regard. She says successful relationship is how you deal with what you don't like about the other person. So I go sweet tolerance. No, sweet tolerance is meaning you're making a value judgment on what they do. And then my friend says, no, you're adapting. No, adapting is make a value judgment if you accept what they're doing. But I mean, if one of your sons come home from school and they say, "I'm being bullied," how would you advise them to do what to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't remember any of my three sons or the grandson who grew up with us in having any serious, bullying done to them. But clearly, as the parent, I'd intervene by going to whoever the adults are in the situation or the authority figures, and not try to do it. The problem that my experience of boys, which is what we had, three boys, was they had that code of honor, and they wouldn't rat on each other. And it's really hard to deal with people that are bullying you, if you can't ask for help, if you just got to tough it out. So
tough it out. That's amazing. James Joyce was the first, you brought up Joyce and Ulysses. He was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
There seems like several questions there. I mean, I see they're very related. For one, I love movies, so yeah, a forest scene in a movie can move me the same way, being in a forest can. The mind and the heart know that they can make that distinction that it's not real. But I really think when I was younger, I was, like being a writer in high school and college, and everything was meaningful. And I had, my mom was the dreamer and kind of the social worker and the reader. My dad was really all about business and, but very steady. He had a very valuable, he was dependable. And that, that was really important, even though he didn't really like reading. But so I had this thing where I didn't, as a young adult, and as I've written my first and second and third novels, I'm not going to do anything mundane. I don't want to, it killed me to balance the checkbook every month. I'd have to put on classical music and try to like talk myself off the ledge just to write a few checks. But as I've gotten older, I'm not so snobby anymore. Because at that point I was making art more important than life or reality. I was being superior about the fact that I considered myself an artist and that I was creating some art. And my novels were never bestsellers, but it was fun to get them published. But in my second published novel, my protagonist, whose name is Tom Peterson, so you can see definitely not that far away from Tim Paulson, actually gives up writing. And he's got a young family. He's been through like a Mad Men kind of situation in Manhattan, and decides that life is enough. We don't. But generally now I'm in a more balanced state. I don't have to be snobby about writing and or entertainment. There's really funny, the studio. I don't know if you watched that recent series, but there's a really funny episode where the guy, the protagonist, is Seth Rogen, is dating a pediatric cancer surgeon. So they get in this big conversation about what's more important, entertainment or saving children's lives, and he feels pathetic as he's trying to make the case for entertainment and literature. But there's a strong case for it. I think from a long time ago, people sat around fires and told each other stories. And it's really a lovely thing to do. Lovely thing to do.
Tim, that was really articulate. I love what you said, because you sort of answered my next question. So we'll just skip right to this. You got ESP, a screenwriter.
Handwriting minds. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you were writing your first two novels that got published, what role did intention play in your creative process?
I mean, I would say, and I don't mean this, I don't care if it sounds a little self-deprecating, but I don't mean it to sound like really harsh on myself. Probably the reason that I'm not a great writer, and that I, didn't achieve what some of my favorite writers have achieved, is because, I worked from outlines, and they were linear, and my story was in my head to start with. And I could, as I went along, of course, something could come up in my mind and I could change that plot. So I'm probably, I think a lot of time, great art, it imitates life more in its complexity. Yeah. My stories probably were a little less complex than real life. Yeah. And that to me might be a definition for really good art, that it's messed up, It's
messed up. What a term. That's really good, because Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much were you thinking of your reader, your potential reader, when you were writing?
It's a funny thing, because I have this wonderful, wonderful friend. I don't know if you ever knew Holly Prado. She died a few years ago.
I know who she was. I almost interviewed her before she died.
Oh, I'm sorry you didn't get to, because you will love that. Her husband, of course, Harry Northup.
I interviewed Harry, and it really went well. But what were you going to say about Holly?
Well, Holly, she was like a kind of a goddess of poetry,
Yeah,
and she just really believed that the what was what was spiritual about creation in art was the act of creation, and an audience that really is a luxury. To me, it's a really a luxury. But I have found, like, I published my books in the late 80s. I've got several that I still market that I think are good enough to be published. But I have found in the last, I haven't begun an original novel probably now in about 10 years. But that doesn't mean I'm retired. It just means there's no story that is moving me to the point that I feel compelled to write it. But I do ultimately feel that the audience is important, and I do feel a certain disappointment in my life. I mean, it's, you could say it's a first world problem. I've
yeah,
published a few times, but I think an audience is a real luxury. And it isn't. I don't think it's. I mean, I was going to say not everything that's published and becomes popular is
yeah,
great, but I think an awful lot of it is good. One thing that I'm really relieved by is the really great novels. I can kind of keep up. They're not writing like 20 of them a year. It's not like there's 20 Anna Karenas and Angle of Reposes being written every year. So I guess I'm saying, in the fantasy world of the artist, you do want an audience. You want to
yeah,
think what you have to share, might be of importance.
yeah.
But the fact is, you and I are engaging in a conversation now, no guarantee. And it has its value in its own. I'm going to be changed by our conversation for the better. And so I think ultimately Holly was right. Don't focus on the audience.
Yeah.
Focus on the spiritual act.
It's really well done, man. That was beautifully put, Tim. I appreciate that. It taught me a lot. And McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium, like knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter in a camera extends our eyelid, and maybe non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends our consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a keyboard or a pen, what humanness does it extend?
I love that question because I think I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly how many novels I've written. It might be 11 or something. I've also written several memoirs, but I wrote the first four longhand on yellow legal paper.
Yeah,
We really loved that. I loved
yeah,
it. I just loved yellow legal paper. I remember my wife and I went to live in France for a year, and I remember going into a stationery store and trying to explain what papier jaune légal, nothing. They had no idea what I was talking about. But then, and the two novels that I published, one I wrote on yellow legal paper and then eventually typed up. But the second one, I think, I'm trying to remember, I might have started typing on a regular Selectric typewriter, but not word processing yet. But so since I've started working on a word processor, I haven't published a novel. So when I really am looking for a scapegoat, it's like it's technology's fault. The word processor sapped my mojo, but when I look at what I've written, I don't actually believe that because I still am very happy with what I've written. I like the ability of word processing to not have to do the strikeouts, but for me, I really do wonder at times, and think that maybe eventually I'll write a project back on legal paper again. See what
it
happens.
sounds like tactility. You're saying that the writing utensil extends tactility, because I'll tell you, a poet in Italy, I says, what does the pen or pencil or keyboard extend for you? And he says, my tears. And so, that's funny because you're trying, and I'm curious, this whole idea comes to Milan Kundera, who wrote Unbearable Likeness of Being.
Love that.
He says, this is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can. Dude, that sounds very romantic. If I write a character on this piece of paper, how can that character go further than what I write on the paper?
Well, in one of my published books that's pretty autobiographical, my wife was representing a modern dancer who was pretty well known at the time in New York, and they had a falling out, and it was nasty. But when I wrote the novel and the character based on her, and I had a client from hell. I was working. It was my Mad Men period. I was working for a PR firm, 15 years after Mad Men, but she was the client from hell, and I just got, my wife's toxic client tried to push her out a window, and my character got to tell off the toxic client that I'd never got to tell off in real life. So,
wow,
I think you can be bigger. You can be bigger.
That's a really good. I'm for these tangent stories and anecdote, and that was a really good one, Tim. So what do you think the motive of the cave artist was, or the cave writers, or the cave dancers, or the cave musicians? What do you think their motive was? A hunch or guess?
Well, I mean, it varies by art form, right? I mean, I remember I had an aunt who was in Pine City, Minnesota, where my dad grew up, and she got connected with Lutheran missionaries in Pine City and ended up going to Africa 3 times. And I was really jealous because she took some of her lady friends, but she didn't take any guys. But she sent me a journal she took on one of her things and said, she'd like, today we were on the bus and we went to such and such. We got off such and such village. We danced, and then the next day we went to such and such a village. We got off the bus. We danced. So, I mean, I think dance, I think, I don't have to rank them, but I mean, something like dance, I think would have been early and just right out of, feelings in your heart and whatever.
Yeah. The motive was to out your in. Well, it's sort of like what T.S. Eliot said about poetry. Poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Mine? My inner dialogue. Well, definitely words. I mean, so, but I mean, my inner dialogue is not going to be written words, but definitely words. I think the artist in the cave, though, like we just saw a lot of great art in Amsterdam when we were there. That's pretty primal too, more primal, I think. But there, I think it's just you saw something beautiful and you just want to record it or mimic it or something. And then writing comes from storytelling. We just a couple nights ago, Jane and I watched The Return, which is about Odysseus coming back from his journeys, and Juliette Binoche playing Penelope. And, I mean, Homer, of course, was oral. So I think that seems like a pretty natural, you want to record that. So
there's a cliche that I love to repeat. It's, if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. So, Tim, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Oh, man. Conviction or compromise? Well, I mean, it's funny. I haven't been thinking much about Pat as we've been talking because I've been trying to focus on the moment. But he and I will often, I know what he would say. He would say, I'm a compromiser. And he has always been profoundly political, much, much more than I was. But I would say that the whole thing about compromise, I kept a journal my senior year, and I remember writing to that teacher I told you about, Bill Schreck, and I didn't journal regularly as a young adult or really any time ever. I usually just write, but I remember writing to my teacher about how important it had been for me to learn how to compromise. Now, on the other hand, Pat was his favorite movie was Shane, and and so, and I think most people, and especially men, who fight wars and battle each other, I think most of us want to think, oh, and like that it's conviction, that we really need to believe in things and fight for things. And I remember as a kid, early days of Catholics, I would hear these stories about the lives of the saints. And I said I didn't have self-esteem issues, but I remember it would really bother me. I'd read these martyrdoms, where these saints would get roasted on grills or they'd get flayed or something. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then one day I learned about beheading. I was so happy. I was so happy because I finally realized, okay, I could do that.
Wow.
That would be really fast, That probably wouldn't hurt very much.
Yeah, well, I wrote an essay recently called "Can Art Stop War?" and it's based on Rian Eisler and Chalcin the Blade and Marian Gabuta saying we're more hardwired to cooperate than we are to have war or be violent. And, who knows? It could be equal, but it seems as though that's what matriarchy was, is when women run the world, we're not in warfare. We find better ways to resolve conflict than military.
Yeah, I've thought about that whole matriarchy thing. I mean, I've certainly met women who could be vicious, or and certainly they commit a small percentage of crime. But I do think generally, men are more likely to be violent. Could be hormonal. I don't know what it is. I take comfort from the idea that really only a really small fraction of men have had to experience war. And I'm really grateful that I had a very high number during the, lottery in Vietnam. And I did not have to go. I had no interest in proving my, my virility or my conviction.
There you go. Fill in the blank, Tim. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
When you use it to dig deeper and find out what the true source of the anger is.
Yeah.
Because I've got my youngest son is a family therapist, and he actually has said that anger is not actually a true emotion. It's actually generated by an emotion that's deeper, and there could be several of them, but very often it's fear. And if I can go back to what I'm afraid of, what made me afraid, that caused me to explode into anger,
that's that we learn that every Monday. We are in a Carl Jung reading club, and that's the integrating the shadow self. Yeah, really good.
Wow.
So that's good, Tim. That's your youngest son. What's his name?
Christopher.
Christopher. That's really nice. I like what he said.
Yeah,
that's good.
Well, I mean, he's very talented, and I would never want to take away anything from him. But that idea of anger not being a primary emotion is probably not original with him. It goes. But anyway, he employs it. He told me about it. So
yeah.
I want to give him.
No, and you told me, I learned something there. Really good. Now, two of my film heroes have this mantra: ignore yourself. There's no self-expression. The great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies and cultures and environments are dominant?
Yeah, I mean, that idea of like having the spirit flow through you, it seems to me like that would work really well with music. I could see that more with music, although I know there's plenty of composers that are cerebral and people would consider them, to be really highly structural. But I've done that in shares during 12-step meetings where I don't prepare. I just go and see what comes out, what the spirit moves me to say or whatever. But I think on the writer end, poetry to me seems highly structured. And I think more so than prose, even the idea that prose comes from the same root as prosaic. I don't think we necessarily are perfectionistic when we write prose, but with poetry, it's more like the right word, the mot juste. And I think poets generally are more striving for perfection. So um, I would personally be wary of people that say that it's just the spirit coming from nowhere and flowing through them. I think with possible exception of music, I think it's got more.
Tim, that was really, no one's broken it down that way, and I appreciate that. I want to go back in the poetry for a second, but the follow-up question to that one is, can art making be egoless?
I mean, I think art making can be egoless, and I really think that the few people who achieve it, have reached a really elevated level. I mean, I something like the Four Quartets, T.S. Eliot, he's really striving for that. He's really striving. I think I haven't read it for decades, but he's really striving. I think the vast majority of art is very ego driven, and that which doesn't make it bad.
Yeah.
Maybe without a strong ego, you wouldn't be driven to create it in the first place. But I give you an example from my own. Again, I'm talked a lot about program here, but my early days in Al-Anon, when I was dealing with the addiction of several of my loved ones, I wanted to write about it, and especially when they got sober, I wanted to write a book about it. And I actually got an agent at one point, and I had these fantasies of going on Oprah, and just being in her warm embrace. Look at you, you saved your family members, blah, blah, blah. But the 12 steps really focus on anonymity, and they call it the spiritual foundation of the program. And it took me a long time to learn what I now cherish the idea of anonymity, to the point where my current preferred burial might be just to have my ashes scattered on the ground with no marker. I think anonymity is what you're calling egoless.
Yeah.
Is a very high spiritual program. You probably know from Jay. He's very into Eastern religion and knows a lot more than I do about Buddhism and Buddhist ideals and stuff like that.
He's well versed in all that and really articulate and a great poet too. Because here's a return question about poetry. Your thoughts on this? This is Leo Bersani, who just died, a poet critic who was writing about Mallarmé, the great symbolist poet from France, and he said the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Any thoughts on that idea? And it could apply not just to poetry, to writing in general.
I mean, I don't know what he means by crises, so I find the question somewhat hard to answer. But if you have an idea what he means, I would.
Well, I think he's saying, I'm going to sit down and fill a blank piece of paper with words. You don't have to put the word crises, but that's a challenge. We could say the very challenge, which in threaten isn't the right word, the very challenge that enables the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a topic that's related to this that I've always been interested in, and it's the idea of writer's block. And writer's block would be, this idea that I really, really, really want to create, but I'm just clogged up. There's nothing coming, blah, blah, blah. For whatever reason, I never believed in writer's block. I mean, to me, and maybe this is being raised in a religion and having things be a little black and white, but as many religions are, but I either had a compulsion to tell a story or create an image, or I didn't. in someone, I think maybe a reason for someone to be agonized about writer's block would be because they're not going to get all those side benefits of creating, which would be getting published, having an audience, being able to be a writer, but
that's McLuhan said the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. It's like, no, I mean, Bukowski said that too. He says, I don't try to write, I just write, so I like that you took the Bersani quote and put it in terms of writer's block, because I think that's kind of what he's getting at there. And so tell me one major element of your creative writing that's changed and one element that stayed the same in the years you've been doing it.
Well, the one that stayed the same is I'm always, everything I want to write has got some connection to something that I've actually experienced. Now, the most recent book is based on I've written 2 memoirs, so I figured I'd exhausted myself. So I'll write about my patron saint. So I wrote a book about St. Timothy. Yeah. And it's the only biographical fiction I've ever written. And he's a perfect candidate because there's only about 2 pages of information about him in the entire New Testament. So that's been a constant. And at times, Jane, my wife, will say to me, "Why don't you write about something besides yourself?" So that, and after 50 years of marriage, I understand that, maybe not fascinating all the time.
First of all, I congratulate you on 50 years of the same partner. That's beautiful. But tell me, Tim, one thing you think has changed in your writing over the years.
One thing that has changed, for me, that's a really tough question, because I'm really struck by, I've taken all these different self-help courses. I've done all this spiritual 12-step program. I practice a religion. I enjoy being around people that are seeking, the examined life. Yeah. I really, really love the examined life. And not because it makes me better, but I just find it interesting. I find myself interesting.
That's good. That's good. I mean, that's what they say. That's what writing teachers say, right? What you know, what you've experienced, and then, make stuff up. So it's a little bit of both. But Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, there's the sort of obvious ones. I don't know if you've ever come across the Landmark Forum, but they have a course. And before that, they were EST. And, they had an idea of strong suits. I had my mother to kind of take care of as a kid. So therefore I became a little bit of a caretaker, people pleaser. And I ended up making a living by selling advertising for a magazine, so that's, take the lemon and make lemonade out of it. That's a lot of people do that. They have childhood experiences that they bring into adulthood that actually become a strength. I think probably an illustration of something that became a bigger strength for me. My mother's was a compassionate person. She was a social worker. She was also, a very self-centered person, but the compassion, the wanting to listen to people and hear people, I learned from her, and that clearly is a strength for any artist, to be an observer and a listener.
Really good. You really have emphasized both of that, and adding the word compassion to listening. That's what we need: compassionate listening, empathy. And we got about 10 more minutes, Tim. This has really been fun. So how do you find peace of mind?
Wow. How do I find peace of mind? Well, I, definitely, I've already mentioned in the past, I did do a significant amount of therapy, and that was helpful. It helped me overcome. I learned a lot about my past and was able to develop new habits that serve me better. But I still, there's spirituality, there's, program. I love movies. I love good television shows, good books. I don't know what it was. I did meditation for a while and I did really like it, but I don't understand why I haven't continued it. That's something that everybody says it's kind of like, oh, praying is talking to God and meditating is listening to God. So there I'm talking more and not listening enough.
Wow, that's like embrace the contradiction. That's good. That's the film Peter O'Toole in Ruling Class. He thinks he's
that.
Yeah, he thinks he's God, and he goes, "I must be God because every time I talk to myself, I feel like I'm talking to God." But here's
that quote.
but here's 5 questions from Alan Watts, just really briefly in a couple words. First one: who started it all?
I'll use the 18th century term, prime mover. My brain literally won't allow me to envision spontaneous a combustion of the universe. I just can't. Yeah. I'm too limited.
The second Watts question is, are we going to make it?
Yeah. No, I absolutely. Do you want just yes or no?
Well, no, I mean, it's just keep it brief. That's all right. The third question is, where do we put it?
Where do we put it? Have a record of it, in literature, computers, wherever, history, preserve history.
4, who's cleaning it up?
We are. I mean, we've got to clean up our own mess.
5, is it serious?
Yeah, really serious. Really serious. Life or death.
Well, that's funny because I asked my friend who wrote Comedy with Robin Williams, can satire be destructive? He said that's the job of satire. But if me or you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, that some people think dying is destructive. Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
I love that Swift quote a lot. I think satire's got a place. Because I think basically it's therapeutic to be able to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think most comedians and stand-ups do laugh at themselves as much as they make fun of other people. So
yeah,
there's a release. There's a catharsis from
catharsis. Yeah, Gurdjieff said laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. So back to that, being able to embrace contradiction. But McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen. He said, behind every joke, there's a grievance. Well, we could even drop the word every. Behind jokes, there's a grievance. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. And that's why, like in my family of origin, we joked a lot, we teased a lot. As when I was raising my own kids, I made plenty of mistakes. But one thing I didn't tease them. Because I just learned from my own childhood experience that teasing and, directing jokes at other people is not generally well-intentioned.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I don't know, like stick with it. I mean, it's great. You're going to really, I'm excited for you. You've got a lot of really interesting stuff coming up and you're going to really enjoy a lot of it.
Very good. Utah Phillips says, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
That's pretty interesting. I mean, the various bodies get to make rules, including ourselves. I mean, we get to make rules for ourselves. I heard an interview yesterday that actually said it's not true that soldiers can overrule a general if they decide he's wrong. But yeah, there's a lot of different rule makers. And when the political situation isn't too chaotic, we figure out how to adapt to these different rule makers. I mean, I'm a Catholic. but I'm pro-choice. So I mean, but
Yeah.
I don't want to quit the organization.
You know,
So
that's funny because, Tim, the word freedom etymologically breaks down to the very same thing that Utah Philip said, making one's rules for oneself. That's the word freedom. What does freedom mean to you now?
I think freedom for me right now is acceptance, accepting the world, the way it is, and if there's some action I can take to make it better, it's that serenity prayer. Help me
Yeah.
accept what I can't change and change what I can change. That to me is freedom.
Can you forget to die?
That's a really funny question. Can you forget that I really would enjoy living to be 100 if my health held out and I had my mobility. But the recently I've been thinking that the experience of dying could be really interesting,
Yeah.
and for example, my mother, I hate when I read an obituary and they say he died surrounded by family. I don't want people watching me die. I mean, it's very private
Right.
and personal. And I think my mother had the right idea. She spent all day with my brothers and other family members, and then when everybody went home, she died. So,
Yeah. No, you almost quoted Jane Goodall in L.A. Times obit was very good. She said something like, "Well, my life's been an adventure, and probably after I die, I'll have another adventure." So
uh-huh.
who knows?
Oh,
But
can I tell you one more thing? Because I love
oh,
it so much.
please,
I've never gotten. I think that the moment of death, there's a perfect objective correlative to it, and it's sitting in the movie theater. The lights are on, they start to dim, everything goes to black, and then boom, this big story starts up on the screen. To me, that's a perfect image for death. What death
that
might
is Tim. That is good. I like
be.
that
Cool.
because
I love it.
you know Kurosawa. This was in his obit when he died. He wanted to die on the movie set and go cut, boom, and fall down.
That's great. That's really great. That's great.
What's a cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Wow, that inspires me. Yeah, of course, we're near the end of our talk, so we wouldn't be going for all the bad stuff that's going on. I think what the cultural shift is. I think we're pretty quickly going to actually be forced to start listening to each other. We're just not
Yeah,
going to have any choice anymore. It's
yeah,
just it's not working what we're doing. Being in our own silos is not working.
really good. It's that theme is really strong here. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
God, a question that remains unresolved for me. Um, is what's going to happen in the future? Because
Yeah,
I'll never know until it's the future.
yeah. Like McLuhan said, the future ain't what it used to be.
I like that. I sure wish I'd gone to one of his classes.
Tim, how has writing shaped your behavior?
um, it's just it's given me an extra layer to my identity that I've really enjoyed. I could all the other stuff I've done, real estate, selling advertising, being a father, being a husband. It's a role, and it's a fun role to play, and it's completely self-invented. I made a choice when I was in high school. I wanted to be a writer.
Yeah,
So, it's like I get to play dress up, and play this role
it's really
along
good.
with a bunch of
Just
other.
just saying the word play is so important because that's what art is. Eno has this great quote in his new book: "Play is how children learn. Art is how adults play."
Oh, wow. I like that.
Isn't that
Yeah.
cool?
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Um, art is how adults play. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Two
So,
more and we're out of here, Tim. This is good, really fun, and I really appreciate your time. This is actually a great writer, American Thornton Wilder in 1928.
Mm.
He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this.
Yeah.
What's it really all about for you?
In terms of well, I mean, confession is really interesting, especially I was talking to my daughter-in-law who was not raised in a religion yesterday, and we were talking about confession. And the idea that you could take the things that you've done that you're ashamed of, don't like, and have them removed. Working the 12 steps, we remove shortcomings too. Temporarily, they come back. So I like what he said about confession, but and the dance always is. You want to tell more than you might tell some people, but there's a deep, dark. I just believe every single human being is unknowable at the very bottom.
Unknowable, yeah.
And I embrace my unknowableness. There are things I will not put in a book.
Yeah.
And I will not sacrifice a friendship for a character in a book. I don't care what I would get in that book.
Well, this is a bonus question because I've left it out, but it's appropriate right here. On what occasion do you lie?
Wow, what a great question. I mean,
Well, guess who made that up? Proust. That's a Proust.
Oh, of course, it's a Proust question. Yeah, no, because I don't know. I mean, I think the way we present ourselves to other people it's highly edited. Facebook is like a Christmas letter. And Instagram is like a a little video. Everything So, I mean, it's not like I've never told a lie, but I think on the kind of level we've been discoursing at, it would probably be a presentation of myself that is maybe not sanitized, but enhanced,
Good word, Tim. It's funny because it's on the last page of every Vanity Fair. They asked a Proust questionnaire, and two of my favorites apply. One is Tom Waits. On what occasion do you lie? And he goes, I didn't know I needed an occasion. but this woman who dressed the stars, she said, that's called manners. So it is, we all, in anyways, the last question, Tim, is what gives you the most optimism?
I think what gives me the most optimism is watching humans interact and understanding how much we need to be loved and to love, and knowing how deeply ingrained those two needs are. We won't receive love or give love if we give in to our worst impulses. So I do think that innate human desire to love and be loved will save us. I really think ultimately.
Really good. That's actually a homeless guy in Venice. His name was Eden Abe. He was a proto-hippie, and he wrote the greatest love song ever called Nature Boy, and that's the words in that song. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return. So It's like amazing how you put those two parts together at the end here, because the first question I asked Tim is, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being, and that's what you stress, connection. And the last question, what gives you the most optimism, is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you. Thank you so much, Tim.
Oh, yeah, no, you're welcome. It's been a delight. And I know Pat and Jay said how much I would enjoy it. And they were right. I trusted them. So I'm glad we got to talk.
Yeah, and thank you for introducing me to Pat, and thank you for raising an amazing son. Jay is just a great human being. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's so great. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Okay, Yeah,
Okay.
even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Good. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank you.